Thank you. I want to focus on the public health crisis that offshore oil drilling causes. I represent the San Fernando Valley, specifically a part of the San Fernando Valley, which is in the city of Los Angeles, that has a history of environmental racism. It's plagued my community. It's where I grew up. Went to school with kids that had asthma, families with lung disease, other health issues that are a result of redlining, of being surrounded by air pollution due to freeways and other polluting industries. And, my community has become a sacrifice zone, where the health of Black, brown, and low-income communities suffers for the benefit of these industries. And not dissimilar to how communities like Cancer Alley in the Gulf have become a sacrifice zone to offshore drilling. The reality is offshore drilling is creating a public health crisis and polluting our environment. And so my question is for Ms. Howell. Former President Biden announced the withdrawal of future oil and natural gas leasing for 88 million acres of Southern California coastline. On day one, President Trump, in his first day in office, he signed an executive order that would reverse this decision. If he's successful in this withdrawal, can you expand on how offshore drilling impacts the health of local communities like mine that have become a sacrifice zone?
Yes, thank you for that question. In two ways, health is impacted by offshore drilling. The first is directly by the onshore infrastructure, which you referred to as Cancer Alley, that's that part of southern Louisiana that experiences significantly higher than average cancers and asthma and other health conditions. The onshore infrastructure that I alluded to before is the danger to the people who live onshore, obviously, and their health. An interesting story, when we started SODA, a friend of mine who's an African-American woman in Georgetown went to a meeting sponsored by the American petroleum industry in Charleston. They, in describing the benefits that they said that were going to come to our area, put a chart up on the wall of Winyah Bay, our Chesapeake Bay, and pointed to the area where they wanted to put the onshore infrastructure. It was the African-American community in Georgetown. So they target, clearly, they target communities that don't have the power and resources to be able to fight these things. So obviously, onshore infrastructure was really important to us. The second, of course, is the increase in CO2 emissions. The amount of CO2 emissions from fossil fuels needs to continue to be reduced. The impacts that we're seeing right now in terms of floods, fires, in Western North Carolina, a third of our state was impacted by Hurricane Helene. There are people still living in tents in the winter in the mountains because of the damage that was wrought directly related to offshore and onshore, for that matter, oil and gas emissions and the high CO2 content. Even Mr. Wilson's company, Williams, has been buying into carbon sequestration companies to be able to help address this issue. So I know it's also near and dear to them. We've got to do something about the CO2 emissions.
Thank you for sharing that. I think these impacts are devastating to communities, especially like you mentioned, those that have traditionally been seen as not having power. But it's one of the reasons I'm here. I'm a member of that community as a Latina, and that represents an environmental justice community. These are our families that are our grandparents, our children that are suffering the health impacts of this polluting industry. And, these disasters, are not limited to just the Atlantic coast. It's Southern California that has been a victim of the oil and gas industry. These disasters, they don't just impact our health, but just also our ocean economy, right? That a lot of us rely on or use for recreation, even though we don't live directly along the coast. Our tourism is affected, and industries like fishing that are critical to the economic success of our region. But healthy oceans and clean coasts, help a lot of these small businesses succeed, and we must preserve our coasts for future generations and protect these critical coastal economies. We have to protect our coast from drilling and work to transition to a clean energy economy so we can create a livable future for the next generation. I yield back.